Now our friend Ryan Divish joining us during an important time in the baseball world, writer for the Seattle Times. You can follow him at Ryan Divish. Ryan, great to see you. So I'm going to start out hot, okay? So my
Okay.
question is, it's a two-parter. Number one, are the Seattle Mariners broke? Number two, if you ran a poll right now on your Twitter and said, who do you want as your GM starting today, Jerry Dipoto or Cal Raleigh, how much would the vote be tilted to Cal?
Okay. First of all, they are not broke. They cannot be broke. That's absurd. Anything that they say is broke. Obviously, what the poll would be, I could insert the joke that everybody's used on Twitter. It would be more than 54% would want Cal to be the GM than Jerry. It's amazing that number. It's just not going away. That 54% thing, like it just has stuck, and you know, like I wrote one day, I go the first or the next good joke I hear about 54% will be the first good one, but it has not gone away. It's just going to follow Jerry until they do something different. And what was crazy is I think Codify put out the statistics over the 2000s or whatever, the Mariners won like 54% of their games. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, no, the first question, they're not broke. I think they're concerned financially for certain reasons, dealing with their RSN, but they're not broke. No, you know what? No major league owner is broke. I mean, if they want to see broke, I can show them my bank statements and I can show you broke.
They need a barometer, is what you're saying. They need
Yeah.
you need to trade Jared Kelnick and Marco Gonzalez and Evan White. They don't
I
need
mean,
to
it's like,
trade them for nothing.
well, it's like it reminds me of like the broke scale of if you have money or not. It's like the crazy hot scale. Well, if you're really, how much money do you have versus how much money do other people have, that kind of thing. But they're not broke. I mean, they had 2.8 million fans this year. That was the most fans they've had since 2005. I mean, the last I think 10 games or 15 games at T-Mobile Park were all over 30,000 people. And, they had the All-Star game, which they don't get all the revenues for, but like they bought a building across the street from T-Mobile Park. It used to be the old Pyramid Brewing. They turned it into their own like bar and brewery and everything like that. That place is packed, and that money is not revenue shared with other teams. They own that. This is a team that knows how to make money. I mean, back in the day with Kevin Mather, before he went all crazy on Zoom, they made money when they didn't put out a very good product and they weren't winning. They still made money. They were still financially viable. Well, now they put out a pretty good product the last couple of years and they brought fans in. You've got a superstar where all their revenues are up in jersey sales and all this other stuff. They're not poor, but they're concerned about their network right now, I think, is at least the kind of the rumblings I'm hearing.
What's the end game here? Is the end game because Jerry Dipoto is going to get on the stand at some point and be like, you know what? We're really pushing, we're shifting pieces around. Do you believe he, as a GM, because I'm not going to touch the ownership and like directives for money right now, do you feel like he, as a GM, with these moves and what could happen and what he said, wants to win a World Series?
Yeah, I think he wants to win one. I just don't know that he has everything in front of him to do it, whether it's the payroll or, obviously it's the payroll. It's like, so when he got hired in 15, they had this team, that had Felix and Nelson Cruz, Robinson Cano, Kyle Seager, Hasashi Okuma. I think those guys in like guaranteed dollars was like over $250 million, like 250 million with all those guys added up. And so he gets there and their payroll is pretty high. It's in the 170s or whatever. And they said, look, we want you to, here's this team and it's old. We want you to try and win with it, but we don't want you to spend any money. So like they go out and what he does is you do a bunch of lateral moves trying to like free up money, trying to make your team more athletic. I think that year, they go out and get Leonis Martin and all these kind of fringy moves of a team that doesn't have a ton of flexibility and they try to win. It didn't work, and then like even in the years ahead, I think it was 16 or maybe it was 18, they have a pretty decent team. They're in it. They're trying to hold off the A's. I think it was the one year, and they get to the deadline and ownership says, well, like, look, we want you to make this team better and try and push to end this drought. But we don't want you to add payroll. And that was the year, I think, one of the years where they added like Zach Duke and Adam Warren and Cameron Maben. Well, like those are kind of just like maybe you're, like a half win better. You know what I mean? Like, does it really make you that much better? Marginally, it makes you better. So, like, what he's having to do now is try to make this team better, but operate in the margins of payroll or create payroll flexibility, which, God, like, nobody wants to hear that. No fans want to hear the words payroll flexibility. But that's where he's at. I think he wants to win. I don't know, and I think honestly the Mariners ownership wants to win. Like what we've said before, they don't like to take the risk factor in doing what it takes to win.
You kind of just said it. They take a lot of lateral moves, but they're creating this payroll flexibility. With the trade, they dumped a little bit with Clinic. They're going to have to pay him eventually or something like that. So they save some money. What moves do you see are going to be on the horizon for them then? Are they actually in play for some of the bigger names, or what names are you kind of going to be hinting at to see them go for here?
Yeah, I mean, like, so they with the Suarez trade, they saved about, I think, 7 million maybe, and then with this trade, Evan White was owed about 17 million if you count the buyout over the next couple of years, and Barco was owed 13. They sent 4.5 million to the Braves, or they will send 4.5 million. So I think they shaved about 24.5 million off their payroll for the next 2 seasons. I mean, it's not insignificant, but again, like, they can afford it too. Yeah, they need an outfielder. They would prefer a right-handed hitting outfielder or right-handed hitting bat. I mean, like, obviously, you know, they've been linked to the Rays because Dipoto's made like 100 trades with them. Like Isaac Paredes and Randy Arozarena, they fit. I mean, Arozarena is going to get real expensive here in the next 2 years, but like they would prefer to have a right-handed hitting outfielder to kind of fill that role. Right now, you're looking at it's Julio and Dominic Canzone, and I don't know who else, to play the outfield. Kelnick was going to have one of those spots. I mean, like right now they have Luis Urias as their everyday third baseman, so they need multiple bats. This is the division. It's got the Astros and the Rangers in it. If the Rangers did nothing this offseason to add, they're still significantly better than the Mariners right now. So, like, they got to do something. Like, is it going to be trading Bryce Miller, Brian Wu? Yeah, maybe. But then they just also gave up one of their depth arms in Marco Gonzalez. So I think, like, yeah, they're going to be looking hard at the outfield. But I don't think they're going to be in on Bellinger or Otani, and I don't think they have the stomach to do a Juan Soto trade. I mean, give up prospects plus $30 million. That doesn't seem like them either.
Which is crazy to think about this because their payroll is not off the charts. It's not touching what it used to be all of those years back, right? Where the game's revenues have continued to go up. Their attendance is better. Theoretically, they should be making more money at this point. So we're scratching off Otani. You're right. We're scratching off Soto most likely because he's going to make 30-something million in his final season. So that's why you're down to a team like the Rays and two names that are brought up in Randy Arozarena and Isaac Paredes, who are good names that would definitely help fill two gaps that they currently have in their lineup. I want to read you this little note from our friend Ken Rosenthal, who just wrote about the aftermath of the trade. And just let me know if this makes your blood boil covering this ball club. Earlier this offseason, the M's acquired about Arozarena and Paredes, according to sources briefed on the discussions. At the time, they were not positioned to advance those conversations, citing financial restraints. Perhaps those talks can accelerate now. I want to point out, Arozarena is due to make $9 million next year, and Paredes is due to make $3 million next year. Is this where we're at with Seattle, where we're nickel and diming and putting them in like the 20th range for payroll as a small market ball club now?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think that way. I mentioned it. So what, like they're internally, people tell me is they're very kind of hesitant about their regional sports network, Root Sports Northwest. They own the majority share, which you would think would make them a little bit more bulletproof compared to like what's happening with Bally Sports. But what happened was is Comcast Xfinity, the largest provider in the Pacific Northwest, they're taking Root Sports off the basic tier, the basic package where anybody could get it, and they're putting it on their ultimate sports tier or whatever. And so a fan that wants to have Root Sports is going to have to pay, I think it's like $18.50 a month to keep it. And there are a lot of fans that just, okay, that's it. And I think the Mariners invested in some TV deals with the Seattle Kraken and the Trailblazers based on the idea that they were going to be on the basic cable package. So you're paying this money to broadcast these games, thinking you're going to get the revenues that you don't have to revenue share from non-Major League Baseball related sports. But if you lose 25% of your subscribers because of this jump up, I mean that does hit you pretty hard financially. But it's still crazy to think that, like, oh yeah, they got to start penny pinching, especially when their projected budget was never going to. Their projected payroll was at like 140. I mean, the league average is like 165. Now they're way down, and they're very, like, they're very aware. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, and Cal Raleigh are going to get real expensive in arbitration over the next few years. Like, I mean, honestly, if they're where they're at right now on the payroll, I don't expect to see, but maybe one of those guys stick around. Logan will be, Logan's got high value. Cal's going to have high value. Probably neither of those guys are going to re-sign anyway. So, 2 years from now, you could see both those guys getting moved. In trades, because Logan will be tracking. He'll have 4 years of arbitration eligibility by that last year. If he hasn't signed an extension, it could be 17 million a year. It's like on that. He could be on. While he isn't as dominant, he makes every start. And the way arbitration works, he could be on that similar Walker Bueller path or Framber Valdez, where they get real expensive in that third and fourth year of arbitration.
I'm just wondering what this tells your fan base, though, as a Mariners organization. The last however many years, you're in the middle of a playoff run, you trade your closers, or you finally make it back to the playoffs and you start cutting costs here. It's like every time you guys get close and you've been searching for the playoffs, you get there, you get close and all that stuff, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's like you're never really going for it. So if you're telling a fan base you're never going for it pretty much, or you're never going to afford to get that big splash.
The words always are going to be hollow. I mean, like, yeah, they ended the playoff drought last year, but where do they go from there? It's great. You ended the playoff drought. You have this window. Like, look, I mean, like, they have a starting rotation that features Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert. You have 2 young kids, Bryce Miller and Brian Wu, that were really good. You have Robbie Ray coming back. I mean, that's as good of a rotation as you're going to have in baseball. And it's a selling point. But, like, what are they going to do with it? The window of a pitcher's health all at the same time is pretty finite anyways. So it's like, where are you going to go? You got this close. You asked fans to believe in a rebuild that they started in 2019. And they always promise, like, once they tore it down and they're going to build it back up, they're going to go for it. Well, like, this is the time. And it's kind of crazy too. A lot of the pieces of that rebuild are gone. Jerry Kelnick gone now, Kyle Lewis gone. Like, all the pieces the foundational pieces that they were going to build around, it's basically Julio, JP, and Cal, and that's it. I mean, that's their core. Like, we were playing this game the other night. If you look around at the teams in the AL West or whatever, especially the good teams or the good playoff teams in baseball, how many of their guys you would start for other teams? Julio, obviously, Cal probably for most of them, JP for teams that don't have Corey Seager, but the rest of their team is all kind of like, replacement level guys, and they need them, and they remove guys that have been above replacement level, and where do they go? Because their upper levels of their franchise aren't very good either.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. That's what we've been talking about. There's 3 players out of 9 in a lineup that are first division players on a team that should be in the postseason. That's a problem, and especially when the team's acting broke right now. And I also want to point out that even your mindset has to change as a writer covering this team. You're telling me Logan Gilbert could get expensive by the end of his arbitration years from now at 17 million. That's basically what Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn and some of these guys, and even Luis Severino. That's like pretty close to what those guys just signed for in the offseason, if you think about it. And Gilbert's like an upper rotation guy, and these are 5 starters on the free agent market. Just crazy to think about that. So I want to finish with this on the pitching front for you, just because we didn't get to the other side of it. Thoughts on the return there and what you've heard? I mean, Coar has now bounced around to a couple teams here in the last couple weeks, used to be a big deal prospect. And Cole Phillips, nothing against him, he just had Tommy John surgery and has a big arm. So more arms for the Mariners.
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess, like, know what you're good at. I mean, like, Coar, they look at him, and I mean, like, you look at some of his pitch profiles and stuff like that, and like, if they turn him into, if they keep him as a reliever and they turn him into Justin Justin Topa or some of these guys that are really valuable, and you get 2 or 3 years. I mean, like, I don't think he's going to be Andres Munoz. That's kind of what they're hoping with the trade from the Diamondbacks is the kid they got from the Diamondbacks make him into the next Munoz. But they believe in their pitching stuff, and they've been really good at it. I mean, they pick up pitchers and they make them into something. But yeah, and Cole Phillips is a lottery ticket at this point. It's great. He's really talented, but he's 20, hasn't thrown a big league or hasn't thrown a professional pitch. So I guess, play to your strengths. I mean, that's the one thing. Like, they can attract pitchers. We've talked about them trying to get Blake Snell or whatever. They can get pitchers, and pitchers want to come to Seattle because they get better. It's just, how do you do stuff to get better on the position player side, and we haven't seen it yet. And I just don't know that, like, there's not a free agent market that really gets them better, and they'll have to do a trade, and that means you're giving up pieces as well. So I mean, I suspect they'll trade one of the young arms here in the coming weeks for a player, and then they'll piece together an offense that still won't be commensurate to what they need to be good in the future.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate the time. We seem to be having an increasing number of Mariners fans following our show. So this was, I think, much needed therapy, because I think this is the third time you've been on the show. And the first 2 times we're talking like, hey, what could Ohtani look like here? And now we're like, can they afford a Rosarena and Paredes?
Yeah, it's like Mariners fans right now. It's like Lord of the Flies right now. People are just going insane.
As they should, dude. As they should. So hopefully we have you back on for something positive. Enjoy the meetings. In the meantime, at least get some good food and some cocktails when you're done for the day. And we'll talk to you soon, dude.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever been to this place. It's the 7th circle of hell.
This is not your area. I saw where you're at, and I'm like, you need some trees behind you. There's some.
There's
some trees out there. Find them.
Yeah, it's not where you want to be. It looks like Christmas threw up in here.
Perfect description of why we're not there. Ryan, cheers. We'll talk to you soon, dude. Thank you.